Hello, everyone. I am here with Era's Kitten Club's very own Soren. How are you doing?
Pretty good, pretty good. Been a long day. Played some OS earlier, but feeling pretty good.
Yeah, we are going to be heading into Launchpad 2 pretty soon. It's just around the corner. We've had our Launchpad 1, 7 teams qualified to lift off, and 6 more will be joining them. Let's get right into the meat of things. Soren, which 6 teams do you think will make it through Launchpad 2?
Oh, I have a list right here. I'll go from like top to bottom. I think the first team I have going, I don't know if that's their name or if like it's like just like hasn't been put in yet, but to be determined, which is I don't think that's their name,
Yeah,
but
they've
it's got
they've been changed to return to 4.
okay, return the four then. Yeah, Lilian, Hook Resets, Moff and Koei. I think that's the team that needs the least explanation of why they're probably gonna make it to liftoff. Um, Leon still one of the best brawlers in this game. Mafin Koi has a national experience with like while playing very very well. I think that they're one of the few goalies that are not national right now that probably could play at that echelon. And I mean, Hook Resets has had multiple seasons in national, so I mean that's a very very strong trio. And I think that's a team that could get close to like making national. So I don't think they'll have any trouble making it to lift off. For my number two team, or I don't. The rest of them are pretty much unordered. I think that's the only one I had that was ordered. I have Polar Cortex, which is Name Chaotic, and Elo Terrorist. Um, Name Chaotic, when he plays well and fighting against the majority of the goalies that'll be in this competition, he'll probably roll them. I think he's got a playstyle that fits really well into like I wouldn't say pub stompy, but if you're not a goalie that is very very mechanically sound, he's going to punish you on the majority of the stuff you do. And I also think a lot of players still struggle against Kazan, which will draw that ban. And drawing a Kazan ban in this meta is very strong, I think. Elo Terrorist, I probably, or Elo Tourist, sorry, I don't know a ton about them. I've seen them in my games. They're pretty, they're okay. Like they're better, they're names that pop out to me compared to some of the names on here, so I think they're pretty solid. Yeah, I think they can make day two or left off. For third, Woe Chills. I think this is probably like one of the more favorited teams. Maybe not like as far as skill goes, but as far as popularity goes. I mean, Taco, maybe not as much a bit toxic, but ZZZ and Cakes are very popular streamers in the community, and I do think that they are pretty solid players. I think all three of them have had a lot of time playing together, and are overall like even if they're not like the mechanically top rank, they have a lot of experience together. So I think they'll be able to. Sorry, someone's walking by me. I think they'll be able to make left off pretty easily, just because they have that experience. For my third team or fourth, I think. Yeah, I have. Did I skip one? Oh yeah, I did. Romeo. I'm not gonna say that. Striker Kai's team. I think that Striker Kai, uh, absolute noob smurfs way too much. I hate him for that, but I think he's a solid player. He's got spring rolls to back him up on like or be in front of him as a shield as the brawler player with a Ryan Calypso and net. Ryan is probably the weak part of their team, but that being said, I think he's been putting a lot of time into other characters that are not Rune. And if he can get a character close to that level that won't get drawn out as a ban, I think that they could go pretty far and probably make liftoff. They're probably one of the weaker teams in my top six, but I think they could definitely do it. Especially, again, one of those teams that has a character that if gets drawn out, if they ban a rune, that's a really easy ban to take off that team, and that means Striker Kai gets his Kai, which is really good. For my fifth team, I think I've got a bit of hot takes about these teams. My fifth team is the Time Thieves, which is Spartan, Nikki Minilin, and Julak. Um, Spartan and Nikki are two players that I think may not be the most mechanically like top tier players, but I think they're very good in team play. I think they have a good idea of how you have to play this game in like tournament. And I think with Julak, if they can keep Julak's mental solid and figure out how to play around him, that they could have a pretty solid chance of making liftoff. Nicky Middleton, I think, he's a pretty well-rounded player too with like pick wise, so it's very hard to pick ban out a brawler, which I think is one of the easiest things to do, and it's something that can shut a lot of these teams down. Is if you don't have a well-rounded pool, you're gonna kind of get caught out. And my sixth team is and this is probably another hot take, but this is completely based off if Fwop Dwop does not DC mid match. If he can get on solid internet for Launchpad and Liftoff, I think his team could make or not left off, through Launchpad, I think they could make left off because I think he's a pretty decent player and Vladilina a bit underrated. The main player on their team that I think will pop off is Color Craze. I think that dude is probably besides like the people that have had national experience, I think he's probably like the non-national player I think that has like probably the best mechanics out of like this entire like Launchpad group for the most part. Not even group two, like last week too. So I think that if they could figure out to play with them pretty well, I think that that team could go pretty well. Again, Flop Dwop just needs to not teleport around. I know that's like why a lot of teams are iffy about picking him up, and we were iffy picking him up because we picked him up for our Play Better Win More team, but he just doesn't have a stable connection. And when you're playing a game like OS, it's kind of hard to not like as a goalie to trust your midfielder when he could just randomly teleport around. So yeah, those are my top six.
Yeah, for sure. Those are some quite a set of teams, and some of them do overlap. But one thing I did notice that is actually different from pretty much everyone else who had interviewed so far is that you don't have Quest esports in your top six of Hamster Quest, Zoro slash the Fool, and Wallaby Gangsta or Vega, who's going to be subbing for them in Launchpad.
I think that what you just stated at the end there is the reason why I don't have Quest at like the top six. Not to say that Vega is a bad player, but I definitely think that Hamster and Vega are two players that have like I think they're a little bit too passive to a point where especially I think all three of them are actually very passive players to the point where I think they may get the team play aspect down, but it's whether or not if they can actually like find ways to score. Um, Hamster is definitely going to be the mental root of that team. Vega doesn't talk too much. I know Zoro can tilt. Zoro. I think if they had Wallaby, they have a pretty free run to lift off. Not to say that Vega's bad. I think Vega's a solid player. I just don't know how much experience he really has at like this NASA tier like competition, and that's one of my teams that I have question mark because I definitely think out of the other teams like they are very close. I've got a few teams that are I have like question marks next to that I think could like pretty easily upset. I think outside of like maybe like one or two teams, I think the rest of them are pretty practically the same and it can go either way. I won't
Sure.
lie.
Yeah, we'll get into upsets a little bit later, but I guess the next thing we can probably look at is just players, right? Are there any players that you think that are kind of stand out and should be watched specifically?
I mean, outside of the entire of Leo's roster, because all three of those players have always been like top tier players. I'll go down because I did write a few. I mean, I got a shout out to Zoro. I give him a lot of crap, a lot. We're good friends. He's a bit down on himself, but I think he's a very, very solid goalie and probably the number one goalie player in this competition, like Launchpad itself and maybe Liftoff. Not landing though, because I'm there, but uh, yeah, especially since yeah, his like only other like melee goalie counterpart that could compete against him to the level of Drew Danger is not going to be there for the tournament, which is why I don't have now is Biro as in my top six because
Yeah.
Evil Drew Danger is not going to be there. But yeah, I think Zoro. The only thing I'm worried about is Zoro is like I feel like Zoro has a really hard time matching with his team, and that's why I gave him a question mark. If he can figure out how to play with these guys well, I definitely think they could do well, and Zoro can fly like he does. Um, Other players I've got written down. I mentioned before, Name Chaotic and Color Craze, two solo queue demons. I think that they've always been pretty solid. I've held, I think at least Name Chaotic in higher regards than a lot of like players do, just because I think his playstyle does work against the majority of these goalie players if he has a midfield to back him up. Um, Not on like maybe not at the same level, but Vladilina I think is also a very solid player that's a bit underrated. Um, I think if he pops off, then his team will definitely make it. Uh, a lot of these players are like to look out for. Another thing I've question marked is Whiplash. I think that's a cool team. Tempo Melon, Coin, good friends of both. Tempo Melon was an EKC sub. Um, if Tempo doesn't troll, I think they're a very mechanically sound player. The question is if how serious they'll take it because they have a very hard time doing that. They've also got Hungry Boy on the sub roster, which is another very solid player. At one point in time, was close to NASA level. Coin, I think. Zero doesn't know what he's missing a little bit. I think Coin's a very sound brawler, and I think if he has a good midfield that can back him up mechanically and give him the core, that he will score. Ayla Lira, I haven't watched too much of. I think I've seen them compete before. I don't know what their mentals are. I've seen them always down on themselves. So I'm a bit worried, like if their mentals are going to be there. Other players that I can think of the top of my head, Spring Rolls hasn't really had much of time to like show improve himself yet. I think that he's like I'll have him in a game where he'll play very, very well, either my side or the other side, and then the next game he'll just absolutely do nothing. So I think if he can figure out how to like be consistent, he could be a very scary name going into this. And yeah, I think that's the majority of who I have on like my lookout list. Other like players look out for other ways to the like one way or the other. Andy, I think if they let him do his game thing, the way he plays, they will win. But I think most of the teams are smart enough to not let Luna go through, and they know how to play around Andy. So I think he might get shut down if he can find something out. I think he has like some pretty solid plays. He has the other opposite issue of most goalie players do, where most of these melee goalie noobs that are all new generation, they just know how to defend and do nothing else. I think Andy's the opposite, where he's like forced himself to try to score often, and I think that's like a way to become a very top tier goalie is to focus on the scoring aspect and like learn how to save through that. Um, yeah, and I think Just Logan's team, Just Logan also plays pretty well. I think that's another team I have question mark because I think that Zuyoshi, when he's Zuyoshi, again, another one of those plays that when he plays well, he's a very, very sound player, and I think can hit NASA. But I know Zuyoshi is a very, very, he gets in his own head a lot, and if he tilts, then that team will fall, probably get upset. But if he doesn't tilt, I think they could have a chance of making it. Let me make sure I don't miss any of the other teams that have players that maybe don't have like a top tier roster.
I will say one quick
Um,
update is that not in the list. Eternal Sovereigns, I believe, will be playing this launchpad, so I don't know if that changes anything.
who's on that roster again?
Sovereign, Alonzo, and Eternal Arctic. They were one game away from making Launchpad 1.
Huh. I mean, if they almost made it in Launchpad on, they probably have a solid chance. I haven't watched many of those players or those players like too much, so I don't really know how well they'll do. Oh, another team. I didn't really look at this team that I think has. I think they're probably the lowest rated team that has a chance at upsetting. Would be like Show Bagel, Furry Femboy 78, and Adrian 59, and Daru. I think that's a team that are all players that maybe are like don't get seen much, but I think that they have play styles that could coincide with each other and possibly take some names out of here.
As
But
they
as
did in
far as
Launchpad
like,
1.
yeah, I didn't really. I'll be real. I didn't watch too much of Launchpad One. I've been like really busy with college,
Yeah.
but so I'm really going off this bias off of like my experiences with them. Uh, yeah, I think that's about it for like standout players. I just yapped about a few teams as well, but
Yeah, I mean, we can kind of take a look more at those teams, right? You mentioned there were teams with question marks, right? And
mhm.
those are the teams that you think might have a chance at upsetting. So let's kind of take a look at that, right? Which teams do you think have a great chance at upsetting?
Um, first I'll name the new ones that I didn't really mention before. I think Lions Eat Bears has a pretty solid chance of upsetting. Lala Mao, I actually one of my proteges, I coached maybe not as much as they would have liked me to, but I coached their Nasty team a solid amount and I gave him advice. I think that he's slowly getting the mindset of how you have to play with a team. I think he could do very well. Vens has always been one of those players that's just been right outside of making the top like echelon of players. And I don't know how much he's been putting time in, but I think Vens is always just a very well-rounded player to play with. He was also on the Fools last season. I mean, their team made it pretty far into NASA. So again, another NASA player playing in the competition, which technically is lower than NASA would be. John Fortnite. I think if John Fortnite plays a lot, that team could play very well because John Fortnite's always been a very, very good player. He's been kind of a land demon. I think he's a very good player, but I just I'm questioning of like how much these players have like talked to each other and gotten ready to play with each other. I think Lolamau is probably the weak link of that team, and I'm worried against how he will do against some of these teams with like these goalies that are very, very good, like Muffin, Zorro. Yeah, I think that team could do pretty well. Um, Gotta list more. I think I mentioned, yeah, Whiplash as well. I think that team could do pretty well. They're all players that, or two of them that have team experience. Coin, I think if Coin can spearhead like their plays, he could do very well. I've also coached him a little bit. Corpse Control, I think I mentioned Andy before. That's a team that it's a big question mark on because I haven't really seen much of we play. Zach Smack, I feel like Zach can be banned out pretty easily, and I'm worried about what he will do if they do. Meow Meow Meow. I think I mentioned that team with Yoshi has a chance of making an upset. Clarion's Lemonade Stand. Again, another team I think could do an upset. Realistically, the way I put it, I think there's like this one top team, which I think Leo's team just shouldn't have any issues, kind of just steamrolling through Launchpad 2. And then like I think realistically there's just like 10 teams that are all fighting for the next 5 spots, and I think they're all like close like enough together that my like check mark slash like question marks were only changed debate like depending on like how I think they would do in team play, which means like if they have enough character pool, if they are good at like coordination, like very easy to play around and etc. Yeah, I think that's all I've got for my question marks.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, still a decent amount of teams that could upset, and hey, maybe even more that you didn't list. But I guess let's kind of take a little bit of a step away from the players and teams, and let's kind of talk about the meta and the game as a whole, right? I know, being part of EKC, you're kind of pretty big on a lot of like creative picks, stuff like that. We'll get into like off meta stuff later, but I just want to ask you, what do you think is probably like very pick ban right now with the current meta and map pool?
Yeah, I know my team is very frustrated because this is probably one of the most like linear metas we've seen in a long time, to a point where I think a lot of these picks, like maybe at the tier 3 level, which is what I would consider Launchpad outside of like maybe one or two teams. Um, Getting into like liftoff is a bit harder, but I think that the picks don't matter as much. That being said, like I said, I think it's very linear. Characters like X and Asher just steamroll the lobbies. Realistically, if you're not picking one of those two characters, you're already at a disadvantage. Rasmus, I think, is under close behind, but I think like this Asher character just does everything you would want in the world. And I think if you've got a team with like an Asher player on it, you are automatically like at an advantage, which I know like surprisingly enough, we don't really have too many Asher players in Launchpad, because I think if we had more of those players, I would automatically put them up higher rank just because I feel like the character is disgusting. Um, X though, I mean Leon X, very scary. Vega has an X. I don't know if he'll put out. I know he's a very big Rasmus like Kazan core control fan. Kazan's kind of fallen off a bit. Coin's got a solid X. Spring Rolls I know likes the Rasmus. I'm going off on a tangent. For midfield picks, I would say obviously the number one pick right now is Now. Somehow they tried to nerf her, and with like the current meta, made her even better, which is very cool to see. I hate playing that character, but she's kind of a must pick right now in either the goalie or midfield role, just because of how low her cooldowns are. She has the healing in her kit. Her abilities still do so much core control for the team. Uh, yeah, I think if like people like Hamster or Hook, or like I mean pretty much all these midfielders I can think of on this list, like if they have a solid Now and they just pick it every game, even if it's not their best character, I think it'll just carry. Goalies right now, I mentioned before, I've got like melee goalies more on the like higher echelon of like how well I think they'll do, just because like how good melee goalies are right now. We're seeing less and less of like the eject meta, where teams would run like eject or mom boots characters and just shove damage down throats. Yes, Demons Raw still did it last season in Nassel versus the probably best anti-kill comp team I would consider, which would be Showtime. That being said, I do definitely think it's a bit weaker. And unless you have like the best coordination in the game, I don't think there's really a reason to play it over some of these other comps. That being said, most of the characters in this game do have enough damage to kill through stuff. So even if you're not playing a kill comp team, if you're playing Now Rasmus, you can still kill. So I don't think it's too big of a deal. But yeah, I think some of these players, like I mean, I got like Moffin, Zorro. I don't remember. I think Ayla Lyra. Yeah, this is a Spartan. Uh, yeah, those goalies I definitely have above like the others just because of that pick. I think overall, most of these maps is like, I think a lot of these teams we're just gonna see a lot of Asher insta pick like bans, and then one team is gonna pick X, the other one's gonna pick Now. If you don't pick either of them and you let the second team get Now X or like Now Asher, you're automatically losing if you're close enough in skill level, unless like you pull like something out of your butt. Uh, yeah, it's kind of a bit depressing. I think speed and size have kind of taken over the meta. I don't think I don't think the like finalized patch note is going to come out in time before Launchpad 2, which means that the current meta that I mentioned is going to be going through. And yeah, I'm excited to see a lot of Mako kitten goalies this weekend. Smile.
Yeah, Mako is definitely very, very strong, especially at this level of play, right? But I kind of want to ask you, right, as another goalie player yourself, how would you rank kind of all the goalies?
Rank the goalies.
No, not the
Uh,
players, the picks.
oh, okay. I
Yeah,
was about to go
yeah,
to a ranking tier list. Yeah,
yeah.
I think these players that are good enough, like they're non-melee goalies, you can still pick it. I think that as long as you have a good midfielder, it's still a very good pick. And at this level, I don't think it'll matter too much. I think automatically I'm putting like Atlas, Mako, and just like S tier. The only reason I would, the only reason I don't have Asher in that tier is just because I think if you're picking Asher and not playing her in the brawler role, you're automatically putting yourself at a disadvantage. That being said, she's practically up there with those characters because if you don't have an Asher player, it's a very, very good counter pick. She's also very, very disgusting on the goalie role. She literally does everything. That character, probably, I think I've mentioned it on the CCL pre-show, is the most broken character. I think overall, including like beta, when there was like that 1 week where she could just insta hit her abilities infinitely, it's probably the most broken character that has ever been in like any released OS build in history. Um, Goalie picks behind that. I think like the IME is still good. I think Vice actually sucks right now. I don't think you should play on the goalie role. Now is another character I've been experimenting with a lot. I think she has a lot of potential on the goalie role because of like her game where she just has like a lot of cooldowns, and a lot of them are very good at like either stunning, setting up for your team on offense, and then you've got the teleport that does one healing damage, healing, and then like it's very good for like coordinating plays. Like if you want to TP on someone, pop a secondary or TP flip, that's a very very strong like ability people have to be aware of. So I think she's right below like the melee goalies. I'd put like melee goalies. Imi like um Imi now. I think below that I know for a fact no one's gonna play it, but I'm a big I'll say this with I will be playing it this national season if it gets through is the Zen goalie.
Oh yeah.
I think Zentaro actually is a very, very solid goalie pick right now, and I want to see more people play it. Not the eject goalie, because I think eject goalies suck right now, but the Pauldron's pick. I think she does very well, especially into the current meta right now, which is like Asher X, just kind of Oki style, go for kills, like solo kills, not like damage kills, just like dash punch kills. But like, I think she does really good into that because her abilities do one stun, which is what you need when you're fighting against an Oki style player, and two, he has the mobility to kind of just like rotate the core however he wants. Primary stopping, the Borg flick, as people would call it, is very, very strong against positioning against these characters who their checkmate is usually not always, maybe not directly hitting the barrier with their ability, but more like winning a strike advantage in the corner because they can just like strike or like primary. The opponent has to hit back to them and they can strike again and hit through them. He does very good at countering that. Trying to think other characters. I think you can pick the Vice. It's okay. Finny, which was crazy to think about like 2 months ago, her being the most broken goalie in the game, is an okay pick now at best. I think Mom Boots got nerfed. She got nerfed, so she's not as good. Still a pickable character. I think did I say Vice? Vice. Yeah. I mean, I'm a believer that I think most goalie characters, if you're good enough at them, you could play them. They all just have different roles and niches to fit, and you just gotta have a team that can play around it. If you've got a team that's very, very like midfield based, then pick up the eject goalie because you're gonna win midfield. You don't need to defend. Help your team fly a little bit. If your team's very like aggro characters, like they get the Asher X, play a melee goalie, just back them up. Make sure they never get let a goal in, and you'll be very good. But yeah, so like just to recap one more time, like melee goalies, uh, now I me, then like the rest, which is like your Vice, Finny, Zentaro. I'll throw that in there. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of Zentaro, right, we can kind of take this chance to transition into the other side, right, which is more off-meta picks. Any fun off-meta picks that you think we might see this launchpad, and who do you think might play them?
Yeah, and it makes me like almost puke to say that Kazan is almost not like meta right now, but like Name Chaotic play the Kazan. People are gonna ban it. Not one of the best brawlers, but I think he's good enough at that character where people will not be like up to practice, like up to date practice against that character. So I think he can just kind of 5-3 on it. ZZZ, probably one of my favorite players to watch when he does like his stuff well. He's got a lot of weird picks like the Juno. I don't know if he'll play Juno, Brawler. Like he's got the Luna Brawler. He's got a lot of weird stuff that he could pull out. I know he's got a Mako. that's a person you can't really ban against, like usually because it's really hard to. Temple Melon experiments with a lot of weird stuff. I don't think they'll play it, or else I'm gonna like yell at them. But they've got like a Mako midfield. They got a lot of weird picks. Andy, goalie player that plays Luna, which we don't see many of those anymore. Probably like the only Luna player in this entire Launchpad slash Liftoff tournament that I could think of that'll play that. John Fortnite plays like Kai, which is not super meta right now. I'll mainly mention a lot of goalie players. Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting because I think a lot of these players, like, I mean, there's a lot of players that are known for their one tricks who I think they're still good enough where they, if they play their one tricks into these meta picks, that I think they'll do good. I'm more worried about like how their draft goes. I think they have to draft correctly for that to work. I mean, you got like Taco who plays a lot of Rune. Uh, I think Juno's still an okay pick right now. I think Juno's definitely a little bit underrated, especially when the people have been finding like some weird tech, niche tech with her. Where like, did you know? Apparently, I think if you like if you redirect your slime as it hits someone, you get your strike back, like strike reset.
Oh, is that the case?
That's what I heard. That's what I heard. I don't know. I mean, I trust like I think it was Gumi and Fudgy Waffle said it something along the lines
Hmm.
because they do a lot of weird testing.
Wow.
A lot of niche interactions with like fight or flight that I think make some characters have weird stuff. But yeah, I don't know. I think a majority of these players, like, I don't think there's any weird picks we're going to be seeing out of a lot of these people. I think they're all going to be playing their characters they're known for. And the few teams that are like maybe not known for one character will pick up the meta picks, and that's how they'll compete. They'll compete with their variety of picks over the one trickness of their team.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see kind of how those styles of drafting at least clash. But I guess one more thing before we do hop off is I kind of wanted to ask you any messages you have for the teams that are going to be competing in this Launchpad?
Um, I think good luck. I think yeah, Launchpad is definitely your first, if especially if this is like your first Launchpad, is your first hurdle of many. Good luck to any teams that'll make it to liftoff. Good luck any teams that'll make it to landing. Because let me be clear, there is only 3 spots up for NASA this season. I know. The rulebook says 4, but let's be completely real. EKC's there. No one's gonna be able to beat us there, especially EKC plus EKC sub on the other side. Um, yeah, I think try to talk to your team. I think a lot of players, like a lot of these teams, I'm worried are maybe not going to play with their teammates much. Get in the DMs with them. Try to lab some stuff out. Make it unique. I would love to see a tournament that is not just melee goalie spam plus like meta picks. I know, like I said, there's gonna be a lot of like one tricks that might pull their stuff out, but like find something unique. If like you see a player that's gonna play like a Luna, play a character that like Rune that like counters Luna pretty solid, or play something silly. It's definitely a way for you to like show yourself out there, especially even if you don't make it to like lift off. It's a good way to show off yourself as a player. And trust me when I say that these national teams that are looking for subs for their next season are keeping a good eye. I know I didn't watch the first one, but keeping a close eye on you guys to see how you play. And yeah, good luck to every team. I think most of these teams have a chance of upsetting each other. So I think that if you play your best, there's nothing that can really stop you from making liftoff and close to Nassau.
Yeah, awesome to hear. Now, thank you once again, Soren, for coming on. It was a pleasure having you. Um,
Thank you so much for having me.
yeah, and I guess since we don't really have much more, it's about time we conclude our Launchpad interviews. Uh, don't go anywhere, everyone. We'll see you at Launchpad.
Go
Bye.
sweep.